And we're live. Hi, everybody. Welcome to the study group. It's our Network Plus study group for August. This is the pre-show. For the next 10 minutes or so, I'll be checking on levels and cameras and chatting with folks in the chat room. I should probably bring up the chat room. There we go, so I could see it. Make sure we've got everything I need here. That looks good. Socrative is up. People are already answering questions. That's great. We will be getting things started. The study group will actually not be showing the back of me. It will be showing the front of me. It'll be something more like this. Don't worry. We'll be getting to that in just a moment. I'm checking cameras, making sure things are good here. That looks good. That looks fantastic. Folks are joining. Welcome. Thanks for being here. We've got some folks already tuning in. All right. We've got phones turned off. We've got... Should probably get the keynote up so that you can see the questions. Green light there. That looks good. I think we're in good shape. I think we're just about ready to go with this. So that's good. We've got plenty to go through. Hello, chat room. Thanks for joining. Thanks for being here. Looking forward to the Network Plus study group today. Got plenty of networking questions ready to go. Oh, sorry. Hit my mic. That's painful. It's not what I was trying to do, though. I don't know what's up with that. And now my aux display is freaking out. See it flashing up there in the corner? See it up here? I don't know why it does that. It's whatever's being sent to aux. And it'll straighten itself out in a moment. I wonder if I go black with that. No. If I go black and then back, nope, it's about the same. Weird. I don't know why aux is doing that. Doesn't do it all the time, though. Just sometimes. It's more annoying than anything. I see this thing flashing over here. Wonder if I could change what aux goes to. Let's have a look at the settings. This is the software side of the video switcher that I'm using here. And I think I program aux here as to where I want it to go. Mapping. Do I change aux there? I don't. The auxiliary output is kind of a secondary output. I get to decide what do I want to send out my auxiliary, the aux output. And I don't know what that would be. I got to find that. Auxiliary 1. So I can decide, do I want it to be black? There we go. Do I want it to be my preview? Yes. It's freaking out, though. Wonder if there's a problem with it. It's very possible. Well, I think... How about that? Well, that's one of those things. Of course, it didn't start doing that until we went live, as things always go. How about just color bars? So really, it's whatever. Nope, the color bars are doing it too. So it's not something relating to my cabling because the color bars are all internal to this. That's one of those things. I'll have to talk to tech support and figure that out. We're going to go black until we figure that out. Okay. Well, that's, one of those things. It's live. Yeah, no plug to pull on that one. There's nothing we can do, but hope for the best. I'll have to, that's another one. I'll have to open a ticket and deal with that. Another one of those things. It's weird because it doesn't do it all the time. It only does it sometimes, but it's really freaking out now. I mean, I could bring down the whole thing and bring it back up, but because that's the correct answer, isn't it? Turn it off and turn it back on again? I think it is. All right, streamers still seeing the streaming stuff because that does not go out the aux side. It's just weird that that's messing up like that. That's okay. I will figure that out later. I need to capture that happening, though. Let me see if I can capture it happening so I can explain to folks. Can I redirect that to, I can't. It's easier just to do video from my phone, quite honestly, for this, because that screen that's up there is actually running at a different resolution than my recorder. So we're not going to do that. We're just going to. It's a picture of me taking a video of the thing happening, just so I can show people. It's kind of messed up. All right. There we go. Number one rule, tech support. Show them what you had there. Show them the error message. Show them the thing. That's the exact thing that was happening. Make it not do the thing anymore. This is a purpose-built system. It does not have an operating system I can reimage. But it does have firmware. So there could be a firmware fix for that I'm just not aware of. We can work through that later to figure out those things. We've got about 5 minutes left till we get started on the study group. How are we on time? We're in pretty good shape on time. Let's have a look. Yeah. We've got 4 minutes to go. The study group today, all about Network Plus. So get your Network Plus stuff ready to go. I think this is looking good. Everybody is on. I can see folks are in there. At this point, emails should have gone out. Notifications should be on Twitter and Facebook and LinkedIn. So at this point, we can flip over to the actual presentation and get that ready to go. Excellent. All right. Okay. Things are working. As long as you're able to see it, I'm fine with that. The auxiliary part is important when I'm recording videos because that is the secondary video part that is recorded. So right now, my secondary recorder, although it's down here and spinning, is recording just black screen. In fact, you can even kind of see the black screen that's over here. If I change my video on that auxiliary back to preview, you'll see there'll be a little image there. Is that image flashing? Yeah. It looks awful. Looks horrible. Now I'm wondering, that auxiliary goes to the recorder. What if I change? Well, we already tried the color bars, but what if it's a problem with the recorder? So let's change this. Instead of going from aux, let's just take and send. Nope, that is not it. That is actually going to a matrix switch. So I could try running direct, but that disconnected the it didn't change anything. Oh well, it's worth a shot. We're just going to troubleshoot live while we're here, right? Get those things ready to go. Okay, we got about 2 minutes left. We'll get things started. Thanks for being here. Thanks for joining us. Thanks for having folks in the chat room. If you are watching this on the YouTube side, there's a live chat available at professormesser.com/live, so you can talk to me in the chat room right there. So there's those things there. Make sure everything is ready to go. We've got an hour of Q&A, and then I'm going to kind of turn around, and you'll have call-in to me. You can ask me questions. So I'll ask you questions in the first hour. You ask me questions in the second hour. That's the way it works. We've got recording. The recording's in the back. Recordings are good. Okay. I think we're in good shape. Audio's good. Replace the earbuds that were in my in-ear monitor so I can hear myself now. So important. So useful. It's remarkable how things get when suddenly you can't hear yourself when you're doing this. Always useful to be able to make that happen. We've got the other things here too. All right, got this course notes, got this. Phone is off. Yep, I think we're ready. This one came up quickly. I was not ready for the study group today. I was, for some reason, I thought I had more time. And then all of a sudden I looked at the clock and realized, no, I need to go live soon. So it all worked out. We got everybody together. Everybody's in good shape. Everything is working. So we'll now make this happen. Let's see if we can get some more of this going on. We've got 10 seconds. I think I should probably get my side ready to go, and we can do a study group. All right, here we go, everybody. Let's get started. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the August 2019 Professor Messer Network Plus Study Group. We are coming to you live from our world headquarters here at Messer Studios. Thanks for joining us on this first hour of Q&A. Today is our Network Plus Study Group, so I will ask you Network Plus questions, and then I will have you answer these Network Plus questions, all by going online. I'll tell you in just a moment exactly how all of this craziness works. We are able to do this thanks to your ongoing support. You are following us on Twitter at ProfessorMesser.com/Twitter. Of course, if you've not subscribed to YouTube, make sure you do that at ProfessorMesser.com/YouTube. And there's also Instagram. There's also LinkedIn. There's also other things. You can always find us by going to ProfessorMesser.com/ the name of the thing you would like to find us on. As I mentioned, we're able to do this thanks to your ongoing support. Of course, every minute of every video that I create is available for you to watch online. There's nothing that I'm hiding back behind the scenes. There's no registration. There's no paywall. You can simply go to YouTube or go to my website and watch every single video. There is, of course, a downloadable or offline version of these videos available for sale as well. You can find out about those at ProfessorMesser.com/GetNetPlus. GetNetPlus. Those also have the option to get audio only. Just want to buy some MP3s to take with you. And of course, my course notes are included with those. We'll talk more in a moment about course notes. I'll tell you all about those. We do one of these study groups every month, though, and I create an audio only replay of these. Of course, you can go to my website and see the video replay of this. But the audio replay is available if you have a podcast, you like to listen in your car, you like to listen when you're working out. You can go to ProfessorMesser.com/podcast, and you can, of course, go through and make sure that you have all of the A+, Network Plus, and Security Plus study groups there as well. So that's another thing that you can work towards if you are wanting a replay of this. Speaking of replays, if you go out to YouTube and watch the replay, about a day after we're done, you'll notice that the entire study group has timestamps in the YouTube video description. You can simply click the timestamp and quickly move to any part of the study group. This is thanks to my marketing manager, Lori, who has to listen to all of us go through this again and put timestamps. So we do appreciate her work. I think we can go back about a year now with these timestamps and be able to know exactly what happened when on these study groups, which is really nice. Of course, today we're going to be talking all about the Network Plus exam. This is a single exam you have to take. The current version of this exam is the N10-007. Make sure that you, of course, all of your materials, make sure they say N10-007. This was released in March of last year, so it's been around about a year. It's 90 minutes long, a max of 90 questions that you could be working through. That includes not only multiple choice questions, which I think all of us are accustomed to, but it also includes performance-based questions. We'll talk more about performance-based questions in a moment. And as I always mention, it's really important that you get your hands on the exam objectives. You can find links to those at ProfessorMesser.com/objectives. Now today, I'm going to ask you questions from the Network Plus exam objectives, and you're going to see how you answer them. The way that you do this is through this live online system called Socrative. You can easily pop this open by opening a new tab in your browser and going to ProfessorMesser.com/QA. That will automatically redirect you over to Socrative. There is a Socrative student app that you can get for your mobile device. It's a free app. You can go to your favorite app store or Google Play and get that. It will ask you for a room name. Make sure you type in the room name correctly. The room name is Professor Messer, all one word, ProfessorMesser. Now, if you've done that, if you've popped up in a new browser window or you're using this app, you will see there is a question waiting for you. This is actually a question from last month. So we get to see how well you remember these questions from last month. This question asks, a network administrator suspects that Category 6 cable may have been damaged by some recent construction. Unfortunately, the cables run through the wall and ceiling. It's not possible to visually inspect the cabling. Which of these tools would be able to identify any issues and their distance along the cable? You would be able to answer this by going to ProfessorMesser.com/QA. And you can see there that your options are tone generator, cable tester, OTDR, crimper, and TDR. Those are your 5 different options. These were options from last month. You may recognize the question. We put last month's question in here just so you can make sure that you're getting into Socrative. You can see all the options. You can answer the questions. You get a feel for how all of this works. Very useful to have this here. Tone generator, cable tester, OTDR, crimper, and TDR. And as you can see, I can see in real time on this side exactly what you're answering. For instance, we can see that 52% so far have chosen TDR, 32% have said cable tester, 12% say tone generator, 4% say OTDR, and 0%, exactly 0% say crimper. Well, in this case, we're trying to find some damage. It's in the wall. We don't know where it is. We're interested in knowing, first, is there damage, and then how far along the cable is this damage? The way you would do that's with a TDR, time domain reflectometer. If this was a fiber connection, we would use the fiber version of this, the optical version, which is the OTDR, the optical time domain reflectometer. This allows you to know how long the cable is. It will look for problems with the cable. It'll give you an idea if there are splices or issues with the cabling somewhere in the wall or in the ceiling. Even if you can't see it, you'll be able to use your TDR to find all of these. This is much more advanced than a typical cable tester. Cable testers tend to just provide a wire map showing you continuity. Does pin 1 connect to pin 1? Does pin 2 connect to pin 2? Does pin 3 connect to pin 3? That's one of those things that become really useful if you just need a very simple test. But when you need a more advanced test, you need a TDR, a time domain reflectometer. That's the great way to plug in. And of course, 53% did choose that. Cable tester, a very simple device that doesn't give you information, for instance, such as how far along the cable did that particular problem happen. So that's another one that we would like to know about. Tone generator is great for finding a cable where you don't know where that cable happens to be, but a tone generator isn't going to help you very much to just find the problem. That's not something that will help you at all. And none of you chose crimper because that's definitely not the right answer. That's what puts the RJ45 onto the end of it. So not a crimper either with those. So hopefully you were able to get in, answer the question, see the question, answer the question, and then follow along with the things that we're doing here. Now we're ready for brand new questions, though. I think everybody was able to do this. So let's jump into our normal Q&A. These are brand new questions. No one's ever seen these before. I make up new questions every month. We'll do some from our Network Plus exam objectives. Now, those of you that have been here on the study group before, you know that the first new question of every study group is not a multiple choice question. It's a performance-based question. If you haven't taken the Network Plus or any of the CompTIA exams before, you may not realize this, that the first handful of questions you get on the exam will not be multiple choice. Nope, they're going to be something completely different. They're going to be fill in the blank. You may be put at a command prompt and asked to perform a particular function. You may have a drag and drop question. There may be a question where you have to match things. You may have to fill in the blank and match. You may have to put things in a particular order from fastest to slowest. You just never know exactly what you will get, but it will not be a multiple choice question. So what I like to do on this very first question for these is to give you a performance-based question. So here is your performance-based questions of the month. Let's see how this looks. And then I'll answer some of these questions in the chat room as we go. Your performance-based question asks, assign an OSI layer to each of these descriptions. So I have 5 different descriptions here, and I want you to put an OSI layer next to each one. So this is kind of a fill in the blank, I guess. I guess it could be, it's really fill in the blank. We'll put it that way. So our first description is a switch is configured to segment traffic by VLAN. What OSI layer does that operate at? The second one is a protocol analyzer captures TCP 443 traffic. What OSI layer is that referring to? A delivery truck has severed a cable in the warehouse. What OSI layer is that? The fourth is STP is configured on the corporate network. What OSI layer is that one? And lastly, the file server IP address is 192.168.33.2. There's an OSI layer associated with that. So I'd like you to match those together. This is a fill in the blank if you look on the Socrative side, but you can simply tell me number 1 is OSI layer 1. Number 2 is OSI layer 2. Number 3 is OSI layer 3. Number 4 is OSI layer 4. Number 5 is OSI layer 5. It's not those, by the way. But you could just say 1 is 1, 2 is 2, 3 is 3, 4 is 4, 5 is 5 if you wanted. If they were all layer 1, you would say 1 is 1, 2 is 1, 3 is 1, 4 is 1, and 5 is 1. So those are the ones. If you get these, you'll see there's a handful of these that you'll get at the very beginning of the exam. You can flag these questions and go past them if you would like. In fact, it's not a bad strategy. A lot of people like to skip the performance-based questions, go all the way through the rest of the multiple choice questions, and then at the end they come back to answer the performance-based questions. Not a bad strategy because a number of the multiple choice questions will jog your memory about the things that are talked about in the performance-based questions. So it's a good strategy. You just have to keep an eye on your time. Time management, incredibly important. But the CompTIA exams allow you to jump from any question to any question at any time. This is a little different than other questions. If you take a Cisco exam, for instance, it's an exam where once you answer a question and you hit next question, you can't go back. CompTIA doesn't do that. CompTIA allows you to, at least right now, jump anywhere you want to go in the exam. If you want to jump all the way to the end and jump to the middle and then jump back to the front again, you can do that. So you've got plenty of options there to tag this question, to flag it, and then come back if you'd like to. Let's see how well you did with your... I notice people are not answering their OSI questions very quickly. So I'm watching as the answers are coming in. Everybody's trying to figure this out because you can't Google this one. I made this up, and it doesn't directly describe what the OSI layer does. It describes what's going on with the network and asks you what OSI layer is associated with this. And some of these, I think I could even accept 1 or 2 different answers. Let's go through them, though. Let's start with the very first one, which is a switch is configured to segment traffic by VLAN. Well, there's 2 very important words with that one. There is switch and there is VLAN. You should already be thinking anything relating to a switch, anything relating to VLANs is a layer 2 of the OSI model, that data link layer. So anything relating to switching, anything that makes its decisions on MAC address is a layer 2 OSI model situation. So layer 2 is the answer for switches configured to segment traffic by VLAN. The second one is a protocol analyzer captures TCP 443 traffic. Now, I could accept 2 different answers here. The one I was really looking for is layer 4. I'm looking to see TCP 443 should jog your memory. If you're seeing UDP protocol or TCP protocol, and you're seeing those port numbers there, then you should immediately be thinking that's layer 4 associated with the OSI model. Now, I also say here it's a protocol analyzer. It's capturing traffic. The protocol analyzer is probably capturing all of the traffic up to layer 7. So if you answered layer 7 with this one, I could almost give you credit there. But I think you knew where I was going there. Either way, though, now you understand exactly the differences, though, for both of those and having that there. Let's go to the next one, which is a delivery truck has severed a cable in the warehouse. Most of you got this one. Anytime you're dealing with cabling, anytime you're dealing with a problem or an issue with the signal that's on the wire or the signal that's on the fiber, you're dealing with layer 1. So the delivery truck has messed up layer 1 for us. And now that the cable is severed, none of the other layers are going to work either because layer 1 is broken. The fourth one here, we kind of have to know our terminology to figure this one out, is that STP is configured on the corporate network. Well, that would be spanning tree protocol. So anytime you see something being configured with STP, you know it's spanning tree. Spanning tree protocol is a protocol that's used to prevent looping on the network at the switch level or the data link level or the OSI layer 2. So we got 2 OSI layer 2s thrown into this particular set of questions today. And the last one, the file server IP address is 192.168.33.2. We're talking about an IP address in this situation. If it's an OSI model and you hear IP address or you hear router, then you're definitely going to be talking about OSI layer 3. So there's our 5 different options. A switch configured to segment traffic by VLAN is operating at layer 2. A protocol analyzer capturing TCP 443 is capturing information at OSI layer 4. A delivery truck is severed a cable in the warehouse, has broken OSI layer 1. STP is configured on the corporate network. Spanning tree protocol operates at layer 2. And the file server IP address, anytime you see an IP addresses and routers all operate at layer 3. If you're not familiar with the nuances of the OSI model, you're trying to figure out more about OSI and how it operates, there's an entire section of the exam objectives that expect you to know this. So you could very possibly get an OSI question. And now, if you didn't understand any of these, maybe now you have some insight into the OSI model and you know what things to look at if you do run into this on your exam. Let's shift gears just a little bit. I can't shift gears on my screen, though, because I need to change some things on my screen. So I'm going to quickly change things around here. I have an extra slide on my screen. Let's get rid of that extra slide. I have another question for you. Let's shift gears now to move away from the performance-based questions, and let's do a multiple choice question. So here's a multiple choice question for you. Definitely a networking question that asks, click it on your side so you can see it in your Socrative. It asks that a system administrator is troubleshooting a copper Ethernet cable connection and has identified excessive FEXT, Fox Echo X-Ray Tango, FEXT. Which of the following would best describe this issue? A system administrator is troubleshooting a copper Ethernet cable connection and has identified excessive FEXT. Which of the following would best describe this issue? Would it be an extended time between frames? Would it be a break in the cable along the run? Would it be that the cable is wired with the 568A standard? Would it be that there is an optical transceiver mismatch? Or would it be that excessive interference is seen on the far side from the transmitter? Those are your 5 different options. We now have to understand excessive FEXT. Which of the following would best describe this issue? Is it an extended time between frames? Is it a break in the cable along the run? Is it the cable is wired with the 568A standard? Is it an optical transceiver mismatch? Or is it excessive interference seen on the far side from the transmitter? Those are your 5 different options for troubleshooting. Troubleshooting copper cabling is what we have to deal with this question. If you're going to be doing anything with networking, you're going to be working with copper cabling. So be ready for challenges with troubleshooting copper cabling. You will certainly run into that on your network. And hopefully you're familiar with some of these terms that come up in these answers, because this is very common for CompTIA to do this. They never ask on your exam, what is FEXT? And they expect you to, and they do not expect you to regurgitate what the abbreviation of that means, for example. They are in no way expecting you to memorize those things. They want you to know how does that used? What does that mean? Not just what the abbreviation is. A lot of people I see spend a lot of time with flashcards understanding FEXT. That stands for this. You know, the name that it stands for may not necessarily help you understand what it does. So it is useful to know the name. It's more useful if you know how that particular thing operates. So let's see how we did with this one. I'm going to click the How Do We Do button, and we're going to see how you did. Well, 65% of you say that it's answer E, excessive interference seen on the far side from the transmitter. But nearly a third of you said it's an extended time between frames. 4% said a break in the cable, and then a tie for 1% with the cable wired with 568A and a tropical transceiver mismatch. That's a transceiver that's in the tropics. It's an optical transceiver as compared to a copper transceiver. That's what I was going after there. So let's talk about FEXT. The XT there should get you already thinking that that's crosstalk. That's what XT stands for, is crosstalk. The signal is your issue here. Whenever you're talking about signal and you're dealing with crosstalk, it's where we have these cables that have many wires inside of them. The different wires are sending different signal down the different wires, but those wires are so close to each other that some of the signals can interact with the signals on the other wires. You have some induction that occurs across those particular wires. So you can get equipment like a time domain reflectometer, we've already talked about those, that can measure just how much of that signal is leaking into the other wires. That's crosstalk. So we have different types of crosstalk. One that we very commonly call or refer to is a near end crosstalk, which means we're sitting next to the transmitter and we're measuring how much of that very strong signal coming from the transmitter is immediately crossing over into some of those other wires. That's a very, very common measurement, is the near end crosstalk, because that's where you're really going to get the strongest signal, and ostensibly that will be where the most amount of crosstalk will occur. There are situations, though, where you may want to know, once it gets all the way down the cable, though, is it really an issue? What is the end device hearing? That would be the far end crosstalk, the FEXT. That's when we're measuring how much crosstalk is occurring away from the transmitter. It may be that the crosstalk is so little at the transmitter that by the time it gets to the receiver, it's not even an issue, but we can measure those things to hear both the near end and the far end crosstalk. Both of those terms, by the way, are in your CompTIA exam objectives. Make sure you're aware of those. So we know that far end crosstalk is indeed going to be a measurement of interference that we take on the far end away from the transmitter. So if you did answer E, excessive interference seen on the far side from the transmitter, the 64% of you got that one absolutely right. An extended time between frames. These frames should be coming in, especially, this is something you really have to worry about with things like voice over IP, where there's a constant amount of traffic coming through. Any large gaps between those frames can cause stuttering when you're listening to the phone call. We call that jitter. So answer A there, the extended time between frames, was referring to jitter. We have 4% said a break in the cable. That is not crosstalk. There's no crosstalk there. You break the cable, there's nobody talking to anybody, so not your issue. Cable wired with a 568A standard is just a cable that is wired with the 568A standard. It doesn't really have a name other than you patched a cable properly. And an optical transceiver mismatch, which can certainly be an issue, but that is not crosstalk. You don't tend to get crosstalk with optical because it's light. You don't have a lot of electrical interference there at all, do you? It's all photons. So no problems with optical transceivers. Of course, you don't want to mismatch those on both sides, but that has nothing to do with far end crosstalk. So make sure that you're familiar with those. Hopefully you did well and knew about far end crosstalk and knew that it was answer E, excessive interference seen on the far side from the transmitter. Let's do another question. This one is more of a trivia question. So you don't get a lot of trivia questions on the CompTIA exam. You might get one or two. I rarely give you trivia questions on our monthly study groups, but because I don't give a lot of them, I feel like I'm missing out on some easy ones for you. So hopefully you'll run into some easy trivia questions. And here is the one we have today. And it asks, which of these, I'll show you what they are in a moment, which of these would be a Class B address? Which of these would be a Class B address? Our first address is 224.17.22.1. The second address is 192.168.77.2. The next address is 191.10.16.224. The next address is 240.32.82.160. And the last one is 125.16.88.252. So hopefully you know what those are. Which of those would be a Class B address? Have a look at those. I'll bring those addresses up so we can see them a little better for those of you. If you're watching on the replay, you can't go to professormesser.com/QA. There's no QA for you to look at. So if you are watching on the replay, we'll leave this up so you can see it. So which of these would be a Class B address? Is it 224.17.22.1? Is it 192.168.77.2? Is it 191.10.16.224? Is it 240.32.82.160? Or is it 125.16.88.252? Which of those would be a Class B address? Flip over so we can see what's going on in the chat room. Have a look at those. You can see now why I said this is more of a trivia question. This is one where you either know it or you don't know it. It's talking about the classes of addresses. There is an extra step that you have to do, so it's not completely a direct trivia question. There's a couple of steps you have to go through to determine which of these would be a Class B address, but it's a relatively straightforward task. This is why I mentioned I don't give a lot of these trivia questions, but this should help you a little bit in figuring this out. Whenever you start dealing with classes of IP addresses, it's a bit of an antiquated term. We don't use classes in the way they were originally designed. It used to be there was no subnet mask that you would have to determine. You would simply put your IP address in, and depending on what the IP address is, you would know what particular subnet mask was associated with that IP address. It doesn't work that way anymore. We don't hard code a particular subnet mask to a particular IP address any longer. That old class-based addressing is something that's simply not done. We use classless addressing these days. But when you start subnetting with that classless addressing, you have to know where to start with your subnetting. So it's still relatively important you know what these different classes are. If we were to go look at a chart, and this is a chart that comes directly from my videos, video 1.4 on classful subnetting, you can see the different classes along the side. The classes that you have to know about specifically for this exam is Class A, Class B, and Class C. Those are the most important ones. And you have to know that first number associated with that, the first octet associated with that. If the first number is between 1 and 126, it's a Class A. If it's a number between 128 and 191, it's a Class B. And if it's a number between 192 and 223, it's a Class C. Now, my question asked you, which of these would be a Class B? We're looking for an IP address where the first octet of the IP address, that first number that's in the IP address, is a number between 128 and 191. And if we look at our list between 128 and 191, it turns out that answer C starts with a 191. That is our Class B address. If you answered C, how did we do with this one? 57% of you got it absolutely right. Class C address is the one that starts with the 191.10.16.224. That is the right answer. And one of the things that might help you is to now look at that chart and determine what are these other addresses. Anything starting with a 224 should automatically, in your mind, know that's a multicast address. That's a Class D address, not even close to Class B. So we know that A, that starts with 224, is a Class D. B is your address we're accustomed to seeing, 192.168.77.2. Anything starting with a 192 to number 223 is a Class C. So that 192 is a Class C address. If you want to go through these and answer, it's Class C is what that option B is. Answer D was 240.32. 240 is one of those numbers down in the Class E side. So you would never even run into this. Those are reserved numbers. They're used only for testing. You'd never use those. I don't think I've ever run into a Class E address on anyone's network, whether it was a test network or otherwise. We tend to use other private addresses for our test networks. You would never use a Class E for really anything. There are people I've heard that do use them, though. I just don't recommend using them because I think your equipment, you're going to run into a piece of equipment that has no idea what you're doing with that Class E address. And lastly, one starting with 125, that fits into that Class B, 125 is fitting into the Class A. So that's a Class A address with those. Your Class B address here is your answer C, 191.10.16.224. Hopefully that it was a bit of a trivia question, but it is a question that's important for you to know for your exam. There will be questions on your exam that do ask you about classes. It's part of your exam objectives. Make sure you are familiar with those as well. Well, of course, you can go to my videos, and the charts and the information about those classes are in there. Of course, I've taken all of the charts from all of my videos, all of the text from my videos, everything that's in my Network Plus course, and I've put them into a single set of course notes. Now, of course, I recommend you go through every single one of my videos. You watch every minute of every video. You take your own notes. But I also know that many of you run into problems with time. You don't have time to go through all these videos. You're looking at a lot of different types of materials. It may be nice just to have a single way to bring up a list of all of these different notes and have them in one place. And that's my course notes. These are $20. Every penny of this goes back to keeping the website running. So not only are you getting a comprehensive set of notes that comes directly from my videos, you're also supporting what we're doing here. I think that's a win-win. Has everything in there: subnetting, protocols, cabling, fiber, encryption, anything we talk about today, anything that's in the exam objectives, it's all in there. Here's a set of these course notes. It's a PDF file right on my desktop, and you can see they are listed by the different videos. We'll look at some of these videos. For instance, classful subnetting. I'm going to click on that. Goes right to the page dealing with classful subnetting and IPv4. There's the chart right there in the notes. Here on page 14 of those notes in the detail. There's also IPv6s in here, circuit switching, packet switching, and all of the other things associated with that section of the course notes. They're in the same order as the videos, which comes in handy. Also on these course notes, I don't just have that digital version. There's also a physical version of the course notes. It's identical to the digital version. This is the book that is directly from that PDF file. So page 14, for instance, let's see if I can find it quickly. I cannot. Page 14 on my digital is exactly the same as page 14. Here it is. Here's the page 14 with that chart right there on there. It's exactly the same content. It's just in a printed format. For those of you that would like to have a printed book that you can take with you, Mrs. Professor Messer always likes the printed book. She's the one that made me do a printed version. If you purchase the printed version, it's a little bit more expensive because it's a color printed, perfect bound, high quality book, and I have to ship it to you. But if you get the physical version, I give you the digital version for free. So it's another win-win. You get the digital version that you can download immediately, and then you can wait. And if you're in the US, it usually gets to you in less than a week, and you'll have your hands on the physical version. So the course notes, of course, something that not only I think can help you, but it's also something that helps us as well maintain and keep all of these videos going. So thanks for your support with these. For those of you in the chat room, you've already said, oh yeah, I've got the course notes right now. Some of you have said worth every cent, well worth the money. Thank you so much for your support. Hopefully it's something that can also help you pass your exam, which is ultimately our goal here. Thanks for your support with this. Thank you for looking at the course notes. If you'd like more information about them, go to professormesser.com/NPCN7. That's your Network Plus Course Notes 7. Thanks so much for your support of that. Let's do another question. We've got more multiple choice questions for you from the Network Plus exam. Our next question asks, for you network administrators, here's your network administrator question. It says, a network administrator is upgrading the company's WAN connection. The current connection consists of a single circuit running at 1.544 megabits per second. The circuit contains 24 channels at 64 kilobits a second each. Which of these describes this connection? That's a very specific question, is it? Which of these best describes this connection? Is it OC3, E1, T3, E3, or T1? Those are your 5 different options. So a network administrator is upgrading the company's WAN connection. The current connection consists of a single circuit running at 1.544 megabits per second. The circuit contains 24 channels at 64 kilobits a second each. Which of these describes this connection? I think we know what it is. Hopefully, we're working through these and having all of this. Now, if you think you know the answer, you would go to professormesser.com/QA to be able to answer those. Have that there. This may be something that can help you with those. Your possible answers here, of course, are OC3, E1, T3, E3, and T1. Maybe those are some you should know. Wide area networking is, of course, and wide area network technologies, of course, are on the Network Plus exam. You will run into many different kinds of wide area network technologies whenever you start working through the Network Plus exam objectives and when you start working as a network administrator. You're going to certainly run into those. If you think you know the answer, go to professormesser.com/QA. Please do not answer in the chat room, and please do not put any hints in the chat room. I have these here. So hopefully that's one where you are familiar with these technologies. You do run into these wide area network, the WAN connections, quite often. WAN connections are tough because they tend to stick around. They tend to always be connected. It's not easy to switch out one wide area network technology with another one. So you'll run into a scenario where you go into a company that's been up and running for a while, and you'll notice there's a lot of different WAN technologies here. And it is a slow migration from one thing to another as we go through those. So hopefully you're familiar with some of these terms. You will run into these when you get into networking and work through these. Let's see how you did, though. If you're upgrading this WAN connection, how did you do? 74%. That's a pretty strong number. Said it's T1. We have it's kind of a three-way tie for second with OC3, T3, and E1. And only 2% of you said E3. Well, there you do get into those scenarios where you're trying to figure out what those happen to be. Yes, it used to be that T1, that was our speedy, fast speeds when we dealt with all of these different network types, wasn't it? And you still do see some T1 that's out there. Let's look at a summary, though, of what the T1, the E1, the T3, and the E3 are like. Here is this directly from my N10-007 section 2.5. The video is WAN services, and you can see the different speeds for these different wide area network technologies. T1 and E1 are the two that are the slowest at 1.544 and about 2 megabits for each one of those. And then you've got T3 and E3 are effectively 28 and 16 of those respectively. So you're getting up to about 45 megabits and about 34 megabits for those two. So if you're looking at some of the older wide area network technologies, at least in the United States, you'll run into T1. If you're in Europe and elsewhere in the world, you'll often run into E1. So they are geographical in the way that you will see them. Now, our description here said it's a 1.544 megabit per second technology. It has 24 channels. And of those channels, there's 64 kilobits per second in each channel. So that is what you will run into with those. So whenever we look at the answer here, you folks made the right decision. Definitely T1 was answer E. 73% of you answered that one. Well done. That was the right answer. Well done getting all of that with those particular options. OC3 is an optical carrier standard. That is 155 megabits per second or so, which is a little bit faster than the 1.5 that's listed here. And we just saw the differences between the E1, the T3, and the E3 that's in our chart. So those are things that become useful. They are a little bit, these E1 and T1 networks, a little bit older type networks. We certainly aren't putting in new T1 connections these days. There are much faster and more flexible connections, something to think about. But you will still see them in people's networks that were put in years ago. It's tough to transition those out. So keep that in mind. If you answered ET1, 73% of you got that one absolutely right. We got time for some more. Let's do another question. I've got one. Another network administrator question coming at you. This question asks, a network administrator needs to make some configuration changes to the organization's core switches. Which of these protocols would most likely be used during this configuration change? So a network administrator needs to make some configuration changes to the organization's core switches. Which of these protocols would most likely be used during this configuration change? Would it be TFTP? Would it be IPsec? Would it be SSH? Would it be RDP? Or would it be FTP? All 5 of those valid protocols that you would use even today. Those are things you would absolutely run into. So you as the network administrator want to make some configuration changes to the organization's core switches. Which of these protocols would most likely be used during this configuration change? Is it TFTP, IPsec, SSH, RDP, or FTP? Plug in your answers by going to professormesser.com/QA. You can put in your answers. Tell me which answer you think is correct. That's a very common thing to do as a network administrator. You need to make some configuration changes to the core switch. Some of you may have even done this before, and this may be an easy one for you to have that there. This is one where you do run into scenarios where you want to use the right protocol for the right function. And this is one of those scenarios where you do want to use the right protocol for the right function. The chat room, Sam asked, is the T1 share bandwidth up to the 64 kilobits for each user? Well, because they're separate channels, you as the administrator get to decide how those channels are used. For many wide area network connections running data, we simply group all of those channels together and use the entire bandwidth of 1.544 megabits per second. Why would you split it up? This technology, though, was created primarily to bring in phone lines. As it turns out, in the United States, the amount of bandwidth you would need for a single phone line is, wait for it, 64 kilobits. Really, it's 56, but we'll say 64 for ease of use with the T1. There's a little bit of overhead there for other things. But that 64 kilobits is a single phone line. So when we were doing all analog, there was no voice over IP. When you would bring in your T1, you suddenly had 24 phone lines brought in. See how that works? And you could separate each one of those channels into its own individual phone call. Whenever a company would run out of phone lines, that's because their T1 got full. And sometimes you would get partial T1. You would not buy the entire T1. You would buy a number of channels of the T1, and then you could add on as you went. So there's a little bit of WAN trivia for you there, for those of you that go back in the day. Network administrator wants to make some changes to the switches. I think this one might have been a gimme. Occasionally I do give you those gimmies. Let's see how we did. Not as much of a gimme as I thought, actually. So 65% of you chose SSH, which I thought would be a bigger number. But maybe we just haven't used enough SSH to be able to know that that was the right answer we were looking for. IPsec was answered by 16% of you. 8% of you chose RDP, and 7% of you chose TFTP, and then 3% of you chose FTP. Now, this comes directly from a video. All 5 of these come from a single video on remote access. So that remote access is from section 3.4 of the N10-007, and SSH, Secure Shell, is what we were looking for there. The Secure Shell operates at TCP port 22. It's very similar to working with Telnet. Visually, it looks exactly like Telnet, which runs at TCP port 23. But when you use SSH, everything going across the wire is encrypted, which is why that's what we use when we connect to these core switches. Can you imagine typing in your username and password, and anybody who was listening in on the network would be able to capture that traffic and have a look at your password? That's how it works with Telnet, which is why we don't use Telnet any longer. We use SSH really for that first S. That secure part of SSH is the most important part. And the reason we use that particular shell is because it is a secure shell. Whenever you're making changes to a switch, you're usually going into that terminal screen and interactively making those changes. You would not commonly use IPsec for this. IPsec stands for IP security, is a protocol that is used to tunnel other protocols inside of it. This is a protocol that's probably most commonly associated with VPN technology, your virtual private network, where you are connecting either an end user to a remote VPN concentrator, really multiple end users to a remote VPN concentrator. IPsec probably more commonly used for site-to-site VPNs, where you pull up a tunnel between 2 firewalls, and everything that goes between those 2 firewalls is encrypted in that IPsec tunnel. So that would not be the right answer. 8% of you said remote desktop protocol, RDP. 7% of you said the TFTP, the trivial file transfer protocol, and then 3% said FTP. Remote desktop protocol is used for doing remote desktop to an operating system such as Windows or Linux or Mac OS. It's not used to do any type of management to switches or routers. That's usually done at the command line and usually uses SSH. TFTP, the trivial file transfer protocol, has really no security associated with it, but we do use TFTP quite a bit these days. It's very commonly used when you first turn on a voice over IP phone. You plug it in and it gets its power because it's a power over Ethernet device. When it first gets power and plugged into the Ethernet network, it talks back to a central server and says, could you send me my config? Because I just got powered up here. I have no configuration. Just send me the config. I'll take it from there. And that initial config is very often sent over TFTP because TFTP doesn't require any username and password. There's really no security. It is the most basic of basic file transfers. In fact, I call it very trivial. The name Trivial File Transfer Protocol, pretty accurate. And then the last one is the File Transfer Protocol. Not as trivial. You can assign usernames and passwords. Still no built-in encryption with FTP, and certainly not used to be able to manage any switches or any routers or make configuration changes. So those are your 5 options. The one that was the majority, 64% of you chose SSH. That's your right answer. Well done with that one. Let's do another multiple choice question, though. We've got time for another one. Go through this. I have a question, and this question is a little cut off on the screen, but I think you'll be able to see it a little bit. The system administrator is a very busy person. This question asks, a system administrator would like to ensure that the internal components of a server are not modified after the server has been installed into the data center. Which of these technologies would be the best choice for this requirement? Would it be biometrics, an asset tracking tag, video surveillance, tamper detection, or a smart card? Those are your 5 different options. A system administrator would like to ensure that the internal components of a server are not modified after the server has been installed into the data center. Which of these technologies would be the best choice for this requirement? Would it be biometrics, asset tracking tag, video surveillance, tamper detection, or smart card? You think you know the answer? Go to professormesser.com/QA, and you'll be able to make that decision. All of those are perfectly valid security technologies. So you have to be able to figure out which one best fits in this scenario. Not unusual on the exam. Very common to have this type of question on the exam. To have that there, hopefully. That's something you'll be familiar with as we go through this. In the chat room, other folks asking, when will IPv6 start being used more? IPv6 getting used more all the time. It's solving a number of problems. We were able to take care of a lot of our issues by using more IPv6. We ran out of IPv4 public addresses. Of course, we've been using NAT forever to help minimize the impact of that, but we did eventually run out of IPv4. So back on the back end, you may not even realize it, all the ISPs on the back end are extensively using IPv6. You might even have IPv6 going to your house, going into your ISPs, bring it all the way down. My ISP does. I could do all IPv6 if I wanted to for these, to have this here. So hopefully that will give you some perspective. This is another one of those questions on the exam also that, and you'll notice I'm putting more of these in because they put a lot of these on the exam, is which of these would be the best choice for this? I think that would be one that does come in handy. Is to know what they mean by best. Best is one that fits best with the scenario, usually less expensive, usually integrates easier. It's the best one of the options that you have there. It's not saying which one in the entire world of things to choose from would be the best. It's saying of these 5 options, which one is the best? And if you notice, some people are very concerned about, am I going to get a question that's not clear which one's the best? No. All of these questions that ask you which one is the most, the best, the least, All of them are very, very clear if you break down any of these. And in fact, this one, I think this one's very clear as well. There's not a lot of ambiguity on this one. It's pretty spot on. Let's see how you did with this one, and we'll break this out. 74% say it's tamper detection. That's where we talk about best choice. Is this really? So our scenario is that we have internal components of a server. I'm assuming this would be our storage device, our video card, our memory, things that could be easily, when you hate to come back to your server and suddenly it has half the memory it had when you first put the server in, not a good scenario. You want to prevent that from happening. And you want to make sure it is not modified after the server has been installed in the data center. How can you really ensure that? So let's go through each one of these and try to figure out what it is. Now, the 73% of you said tamper detection. Tamper detection means that you are going to put some type of either a physical or digital method of identifying when that particular device has been tampered with. The most easy ones are these hardware tamper detection, where it is a strip that it goes across this. We see this a lot, of course, when we're at our putting gas in our car these days. They put tamper detection around credit card readers now to prevent anybody from putting skimmers on them. So it's a similar scenario. We would put tamper detection, and if anybody opened the case of that server, they would have to either cut or remove that. And when they cut or removed it, we would, of course, see the cut. If they removed it, then we would see the message that was left underneath. This one leaves a message that says void underneath, that asset tag. That's a foil one that has that tamper detection on it. There are also digital versions of these that when you restart the server, it will tell you if somebody had opened the case and put the case back down again. So that becomes very useful to have that there. Now, why would that be the best option for this requirement? It's a very simple requirement that said, we would like to ensure the internal components of a server are not modified after it's been installed to the data center. So the second most popular response was biometrics. 14% said biometrics. Biometrics, of course, is a way to authenticate based on who you happen to be, based on a fingerprint, based on an iris, based on your voice, based on your face, based on a handprint, based on something that is you. Biometrics in and of itself is a very useful authentication factor, but it doesn't do anything about informing us that somebody's been inside of our server. That doesn't help to know any of this. We want to ensure the internal components of a server are not modified. I didn't even give any context. Biometrics. No. What are you talking about? You mean getting in the door? You mean biometrics in general? Biometrics in general don't provide any notification that anybody has gotten into a device. All they are used for is authentication, and that's one where it doesn't really apply in this particular scenario. 6% of you said video surveillance. Video surveillance would be a useful way to determine if somebody got into the internal components of a server. So I could see why you would answer that. In fact, that if we're collecting all the things that it could be, I would put that into the category of things that it could be. That would be a good one to use. I would absolutely look at that. Video surveillance, sure. All you have to do is watch the video surveillance 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, and see if anybody ever goes in there. Probably not the best use of video surveillance. Some video surveillance will tell you if there's been motion. Okay, great. Anytime anybody walks near your server, you're going to have to watch the video to see if they went in. So could it be used to ensure that nobody modifies or at least inform you that somebody has gone inside of your server? Yes, it could be used for that. So we're going to put it in that category from the moment. So already we've got tamper detection and video surveillance as two technologies that could help us here. 5% of you said a smart card. Again, smart card is just an authentication factor. We don't even talk here about how the smart card would be used. I just sort of vaguely said smart card. Again, has nothing to do with the inside of a server. Certainly can't help identify when someone has gone in a server, so smart card would not be a valid answer either. Asset tracking tag. These are tags that go on the outside of a device that allow you to know where that device is. So hopefully when it was installed into the data center, your database got the asset tracking tag. This is server, has a tag on it. The number on the tag is number 7. In our database, number 7 is in the data center. Now, if somebody goes into that server, takes some memory out of it, and closes the server back up, asset tracking tag doesn't change. It's still server number 7. That has no way to inform us that anything has been modified on the inside of that server. It's only a way to track where that server happens to be. So we've got 2 possible answers here. One is tamper detection. The other is video surveillance. We've already talked about how cumbersome video surveillance would be with this. Tamper detection, especially when you're dealing with one of these tamper detection tags, you walk up to the server, you look at it, instantly you know whether the server's been tampered with. That's the beauty of these tamper detection tags, by the way. You know immediately if anyone has gone inside of the server because the tag has either been cut or the tag has been removed, and it leaves a message like this on the outside of the server. So that is one where there's no constant monitoring. You don't have to look through days and days of tapes. You don't have to look at hours of video to know what this is. The only possible answer here is indeed answer D. So when you get these questions that ask for the best possible answer, like this one, there may be more than one answer that could technically do it. But as you can see here, there's only one that was really the best answer. In fact, it wasn't even close. Nothing else was even remotely in the same area as being the best answer. So we know tamper detection's there. Now in the chat room, people are going, but wait, I could use biometrics to watch when people come in the door. Yeah, in fact, many data centers do use biometrics as a way to authenticate people into the door. Many data centers use smart cards to authenticate people into the door of the data center. Allowing people into the data center is also something that is not related to anyone going into the inside of a server, changing the internal components of a server. So even biometrics and smart card don't even apply here. I'm going with D. It's the best possible answer. It's very unambiguous. It is very clear what the best possible answer is here. And if you answer D, 73% of you got that one absolutely right. I would not say that this is a tricky question. This is a very straightforward question. None of the questions you get on your exam will be quote unquote trick questions. None of them are trying to get you to answer something else if you happen to know what they're talking about in the question. So that's the real key. They will, of course, if they think you don't know what some of these terms are, some of these answers could lead you astray. You could think, well, that could be close. It could use video surveillance. No, we know here we're looking for a very specific thing, and we have to know what those different technologies are and how they work. Well, I know we're at the top of the hour, but let's do another question. I think we could do one more, fit another one in on this study group. I think I've got one that we could do for this. Let's move to the next question. Again, I'm stuck on this network administrator this time. And here again, this poor network administrator, we are running ragged. A network administrator has performed a packet capture on a VoIP application and has noticed excessive delays between individual packets. It's a bit of a callback. Which of the following would describe these delays? Let's see how well you're paying attention, everyone. A network administrator has performed a packet capture on a VoIP application and has noticed excessive delays between individual packets. Which of the following would describe these delays? Would it be attenuation, interference, jitter, excessive SNR, or a security type mismatch? Those are your 5 different options. Network administrators performed a packet capture on VoIP application, has noticed excessive delays between individual packets. Which of the following would describe these delays? Attenuation, interference, jitter, excessive SNR, or a security type mismatch. Those are your 5 options. Lock in your answer. Go to ProfessorMesser.com/QA and be able to lock in your answer. See what those happen to be. Yeah, see, people in the chat room have run into this before, where you've put things on a desktop, things in a server. You come back later and suddenly the desktop has less memory than it used to have. People do this all the time. They would go into systems. They would take a stick out. They put extra memory in their computer. You're right. And it takes, if you aren't watching this, you have no way to do tamper detection. A lot of BIOS will do tamper detection too. You can configure it in the BIOS to tell you when it's been tampered with. So that's a challenge to figure that out. when that happens. Yep, that's a perfect example of using tamper detection, how it would be very useful to you, which is why it's in the Network Plus exam objectives. Run into that quite a bit to have that type of security. So hopefully you're familiar with these particular questions and how they work here. Now, for those of you that were listening earlier, you were probably able to answer this question. The network administrators performed a packet capture on a VoIP application, has noticed excessive delays between individual packets. Which of the following would describe these delays? It is an option between attenuation, interference, jitter, excessive SNR, and a security type mismatch. Now, for those of you going way back to the beginning of the study group, we talked a little bit about some of these different things you would run into. And I specifically gave this one away. I told you for voice over IP applications, one of the things that most important for us to know about is the amount of delay between the packets. And if you ever run into that, especially with excessive delay, we often say that that particular voice conversation has excessive jitter. And 64% of you, only 64%. I was expecting 100% from you, and you gave me 64%. Now I'm wondering, was I not talking loud enough? 64% said jitter, and that is the right answer. Jitter is the amount of time that you would measure between a frame, from one frame to the other. And if you start to get congestion on the network, there may be a bit of buffering. You might have packets that are buffering up, and then suddenly they come through the network. So instead of the packets coming through in a very set manner, what you end up having are packets that come through with longer distances between those frames. And we say that the jitter in that scenario is an extended amount of jitter to have that there. You want a very predictable, especially with voice over IP, a predictable measurement of frames. That's why we generally will enable quality of service on a network so that we can give voice communication a higher priority than somebody who may be downloading a very large Linux distribution and slowing everything down. This way your phone calls can continue to work properly with a minimal amount of jitter between those frames. And now you don't have to worry so much about missing parts of the conversation. Attenuation, let's go first. The 17% of you said interference. Interference is when the information turns into garbage. It's something where there may be a light or some other third-party type of device is causing a problem with the signal across the network. This doesn't have to do with delays between the packets. This has to do with the packets getting garbled themselves. That would be interference. Attenuation is when the individual packets, we just get the signal goes away. That's attenuation, when we're simply losing the signal. The signal was here, and then all of a sudden the signal's not there anymore. That's attenuation. So that's not our situation either. The situation wasn't where we were just simply losing the signal. The signal was going away. The problem was that the signal, the frames themselves, had gaps between them. So it would not be attenuation. Excessive SNR, that is the signal to noise ratio. This is commonly seen on wireless networks, although there is SNR that can be on a wired network as well. The signal to noise ratio is something very common on wireless, especially if you're in an area with a lot of other wireless technologies. There's a lot of other wireless signals. Now, your antenna is right there in the other room. Your signal is going to be very strong. But all of the other signal around you, that's noise. And what you want is a much louder signal than what we have noise. That way your signal can make it through the noise. So you want your signal to noise ratio to be very wide. You want much more signal than you would ever have noise. If you got a 1-to-1 ratio of signal to noise, that's a very bad situation to be in. Or even less than 1-to-1, be a very bad situation to be in. So it would not be excessive signal to noise ratio. And last one, the security type mismatch. Commonly security types, even on wireless networks, if you have WEP and other devices configured for WPA2, that's an example of a security type mismatch. Not the scenario we have here. The scenario we have here deals specifically with jitter, and that's the one that is the correct answer. If you answered option C for jitter, that is the correct response. All the questions we did today came directly from the CompTIA exam objectives, an extensive set of objectives. You should absolutely be familiar and have your hands on these. You can go to professormesser.com/objectives to have links to the Network Plus exam objectives. Make sure you get those. It will change your studies. Absolutely will help you. We do one of these study groups every month. This Q&A part that we just did, for example, we'll do it again in September, on September the 18th. We've got another event. If this is after September the 18th, you can always go to my calendar at professormesser.com/calendar to see when the next live event's going to be. If you'd like to join us next week, we're going to do a Security Plus study group. So if you're interested at all in security, come back next Wednesday. We'll do exactly the same thing. Well, we're not done yet, though. The first part of the study group's over. I've asked you the questions. Now it's time for you to ask me the questions. I will be taking your questions in the chat room at professormesser.com/live, and I will be taking your questions from the phone lines. We'll open up the phone lines. I'll tell you all about that in a moment. Don't forget, though, that if you would like to follow what we're doing here, you can simply type in professormesser.com/ the name of the thing you would like to find us on. So if you'd like to see the crazy Instagram I posted yesterday about me needing to update my email and verify my email address, you'll be surprised how many years it's been since I verified my email address. You can see that at professormesser.com/Instagram. Don't forget to subscribe to us at professormesser.com/YouTube. And every Tuesday, we have a pop quiz question of the day. I put it on Twitter at professormesser.com/Twitter. Oh, we do need a question of the month. If you are watching this for continuing education unit credit, thank you, chat room. I would like to send you an email that is digitally signed by me. And the way you would do that is you would go to the top or the bottom of the Professor Messer website. You would put in there that you put your name, put your email address, because I am going to send this back to you through email, so make sure that's correct. And the subject line, put that this is the August 2019 Network Plus Study Group. And somewhere in the text of that, please make very plain that I would like to have a particular piece of text in there that has the word jitter. That is our question. Our super secret code of the month is jitter. So you have to follow that set of instructions. If you do not follow that set of instructions, you cannot earn the digitally signed email that you can then use for continuing education unit credit. So people in the chat room are suddenly realizing how long it's been since I verified my email address on my Instagram. That's correct. Then that was the right number. It's surprising. In fact, I've had that email to verify for more than 19 years, which is surprising as well. Don't forget about the course notes that are available at professormesser.com/NPCN. We do one of these every month. Stick around for the next hour, though. You don't have to go to the calendar to see what's there. Just take your phone calls right now and be able to do that. Thanks for being here for this first hour, though. We'd love to have you here. It's always fun to do the Q&A. We'll do it again next month. Come on back. Thanks for being here this time. We'll see you next time on the Network Plus Study Group. Let me see if I can get the phone lines up and running and see if we can make that happen. There we go. There's the phone number. That's there. I'm not even called into it yet. I haven't even started it. You might not even be able to call into that number yet because I've not opened up the phone lines. I put it up there a little too quick. That's okay. I've already told you that it's there. I will turn on the show. Let me do that right now. There we go. So now I can catch those folks that are trying to call in right now. I have to call into the show first, though. So I will do that. Oh, the folks in the chat room, this question came up myself about the differences. I will talk about this in just a moment. Let me first call into my own show. How would I do that? Well, I would type a few things on my screen. I would click this. I would click call. And let's see if I can call in. It's going to ding, ding, ding.
Thank you.
Yeah, well, you're welcome. Now I have to type in this right here and a £.
Enter your 6-digit PIN number.
That's redundant, but we'll do it anyway. And I'll type that in, and the nice lady will say,
welcome.
Oh, that's nice. Thank you so much for welcoming me. That's there. So folks already calling in from New York City. Stay on the line. Thank you for calling in. We'll come back to you in just a moment. I'll take a question from the chat room. For those of you that would like to call in, you're more than welcome to. You can call in toll free anywhere in the continental United States. You would type in 855-785-RJ45. If you are outside of the U.S., you can still call in for free. Use Skype. Skype will allow this toll-free number to be used without any Skype minutes. Absolutely free by putting a +1 at the beginning. So you would call +1 855-785-7545. I'm also taking questions from the chat room. So if you are in the chat room at professormesser.com/live, you are more than welcome to put questions in there. I'm watching them go by. For example, we did get a question from the chat room for specific to the Network Plus exam. The question was that person in the chat room took the N10-006 last year, didn't quite pass, want to take the N10-007, and the question was, how much has really changed between these two exams? Is it much of a difference between the two? Well, what I have done when I put these videos together is I have put these. I created a list. I went to the CompTIA exam objectives, and every place that there was exactly the same content, I colored in green on my side. Anywhere something was added or significantly changed, I marked in yellow or I marked in purple. So you can see kind of a smattering of things. Those are the first 2 pages, the next 2 pages. Not a huge set of differences. This is the early version of what I was working with. But that gives you an idea anyway. I think I do have the very specific set of statistics that will say exactly how much. I think I did calculate them. So let me bring up and see if I can find those. What would those be? N10-06-007 comparison. I calculated in the N10-007, there are approximately 499 objectives. I guess you could round it up to 500 individual objectives as I count them. I have a very specific way of counting the objectives, but that's what I came up with. Of those 499 objectives, 171 of them were new in the Network Plus exam, in the N10-007, as compared to the 006. If you do the math, that means that 34.27%, so about 35%, just over a third of the exam is brand new. That's a pretty significant number. If you're somebody who's working on your exam objectives, that's a good number to be working with. So make sure, as you are, that you are studying from the N10-007 exam objectives. That will be very important to you. Do not use the older ones for that reason. That's why. That's very different. One of the things I will do, I did this for the A+, and it sounds like people still need this content. I already have this list of things that is different on my screen here. I can put this into a document on my website. I already did this for the A+. So if you go to professormesser.com/objectives, this is new. So if this pops you just over to the CompTIA website, you'll have to clear your cache to come back to this. But if you come by my site, you will get a single page. There's the page with just the objectives in it and chat room there. And I put highlighted editions on the A+. So if you're somebody who's studying for the A+, you can click that. It lists out all of the A+ objectives for that. And then anything that changed, I highlighted on the screen in yellow. So if you'd like me to do that if you think that would be valuable for the Network Plus, I'd be glad to do that this weekend. I can go through and add the Network Plus in here. I probably would not do it for the Security Plus. The differences here for Security Plus are significantly different for that. So yes, this is on my website, everyone. So these are the ads that show people wondering, why is there an ad on the screen? Because this is my website. This is what we're looking at. I guess I can make it bigger for you to see. So we're looking at my site, and advertisements on my site's another way to help support these videos and keep everything going. So that's why you're seeing that. Don't be thrown like, where'd the ads come from? That's what that is. If you think that would be useful, I'll be glad to add that this week. And keep checking back to professormesser.com/objectives, and you'll be able to find that there as well. Have all of those pieces and be able to see that. Let's go back to the phone lines, though. We did have some folks calling in, and it would be good to answer those questions. Thank you for holding, caller, in the 929 area code. Hi, caller. What's your name? Where are you calling from?
Hello, Professor. Can you hear me?
We hear you great.
Okay, I'm calling because in regards, I actually took my Network Plus exam earlier today at 11 a.m. and I passed.
All right. Congratulations on passing your Network Plus. That's your timing. This is pretty spot on. This is something that happened just now. How are you feeling?
Disbelieved, actually.
Why? Of course you were going to pass it. There's no disbelief there. And we know that you can't tell us exactly what was on the exam because that would be a violation of your candidate agreement. But what are you're fresh out of the exam. What are your overall experience? What is very broadly, how did it go for you?
Well, it was more than a few simulation questions. It wasn't just filled with multiple choice. And also, I will have to say that your 7-second subnetting video helped me out on more than a few questions.
Fantastic. That's one. Some people have brought this up before. For those of you not familiar with this, there's many different ways to learn how to subnet. Eventually, you're just going to be subnetting in your head. It's just going to be a normal part of what you do. But there's a lot of different ways to learn subnetting. I made one that I did for me because I'm incapable of thinking during an exam, much less doing math. So I made a manual subnetting method that had no math, very little math associated with it. And that's what the caller's referring to is that 7-second subnetting. I'm glad that worked out. That's what I used on not just Network Plus. I used that on my Cisco exams because it's so quick. I know the answer's right and I just keep things moving. So I'm glad that worked for you.
Interesting thing about that subnetting, I studied it an hour before I left. I had no knowledge of it.
Wow.
I studied it on the spot and somehow I remembered it.
Excellent. And then
I just went and took it.
Now, on this exam, obviously, the Network Plus exam, it's a very broad exam. It has tons of abbreviations. There's so much you have to learn. How long did you spend with your overall studies? How many months in the work or how many weeks has it been to study for this exam?
2.5 months to 3 months.
Okay. I would say that's pretty spot on the average. That's what most people coming to my site spend about 3 months on average on this. So you're actually a little below, a little faster than the average there at 2.5 months. That's a pretty good number. How did you, during the exam, did you think you were going to pass this exam?
There were some questions that disheartened me, I will say. It made me think it was just up and down like a roller coaster because there were some questions that made me think, oh, I'm definitely failing.
Right.
But there were some questions like, oh, this is so easy. I know this. I'm passing this.
I like those. I love it when you get the easy ones, the slow balls that you can really hit. It's a trivia question. They're asking you something you really studied and you know, and then you get to that next question, you don't even understand the language they're using.
Exactly. Yeah, there were some questions that bordered on Security Plus, and I'm a bit unfamiliar in that area, so I just winged it.
Yeah, there is a whole section.
I just used process of elimination.
That whole section on security, there's a lot of overlap there to the Security Plus. A lot of the Security Plus was put right into Network Plus. Yeah, and if you're not familiar with it, some of it's kind of obvious, but others of these security questions, like the one we had today about tamper resistant, sometimes you get thrown by those.
Right.
So,
and I also have a question. I passed, but the center that I took my exam at, they didn't give me a paper. So what do I get in return? Do I get an email?
This is a bit of a transition that's going on right now. I'm not familiar with exactly what they are doing or what the timeframes are. But for those of you that have taken these exams in the past, they print out a piece of paper and in some places even have a stamp that they stamp it with to, I don't know, to certify that it really came from the testing center. And it tells you the results of what your exam you just took. And it tells you the things that you got wrong at a very broad level. It tells you the areas of the exam you got wrong, not the specific questions. But if you got a security question wrong, it tells you the type of security question you got wrong. What I've seen, though, is they have started to transition these so that you can get that that output now in your Pearson Vue login. So I love this idea, by the way, because those of you that have had to deal with this in the past, and those of you that have your A+ certification, the printer never works. It never works. So you'll take your exam, you'll want to print out of how you did, and they won't be able to print it out. And the problem was once you left, once they clicked they were done, there was no way to go back and get that piece of paper, which was really silly. Now, ideally, from what I have read, you are supposed to be able to go into your Pearson Vue account, and maybe not today, but shortly, you should be able to have access to that output, that final document that shows you that information. It's a valuable piece of information if you pass, because it proves you passed. It's probably more valuable if you don't pass, because it tells you the things you need to study. So another important piece of information to have. I think that's where you're going to find it in the future. It might be worth calling Pearson Vue and asking them about that.
Right, because I passed and the screen said you passed and the stamp was on the screen and everything. And am I allowed to say the score that I got?
Sure, yeah, you can.
I've got a 728, which is barely, but I did pass.
Well, as it turns out, there is no barely. I would argue that you studied just the right amount. You didn't study too much.
Right.
You didn't study too little. You studied exactly the right amount you should to be able to pass this. That's the nice part about these exams, is no one will ever see that number. All they know is that you're Network Plus certified and you keep it going. What are your next steps now? Now that you've got the Network Plus, are you did you get the certification for a particular reason, or is there an idea of what you're going to be doing next with certifications?
I got it because I'm a college major. I'm majoring in IT security.
Great.
And for my future, that would definitely help me.
This would, as I mentioned, the networking aspect is incredibly important for IT security. It is in IT security, most of what you're doing is networking. So this can only help you. Hopefully you have a direction and an idea to give you more networking under your belt as well.
After this, I'm immediately jumping into Security Plus.
Great.
I'm not getting out of the pool. I'm staying in the pool and I'm jumping straight into Security Plus.
Excellent. And you already got the mode. You already got the system down. It's the same process. You've got the same flow. Why not take advantage of that and get the Security Plus stuff done? Learn more about the security side. Learn the nomenclature. Understand how security people talk to each other, because it's a little bit of a different language than the networking side of things. And definitely get some of those things down. That can also only help you when you start on your job hunt as well.
Right. Before I head out, I just have to thank you from the bottom of my heart, because your videos and your PDF guide helped me tremendously.
Ah, good to hear it.
Before that, everything was just scattered throughout the internet, and you just have to get it from different sources. But everything from your side was in order. And if I was confused on, let's say, platform as a service, I can just go to platform as a service in the cloud section, rather than it's just scattered all over the place. So that helped me out tremendously when I was stuck on certain areas.
So glad to hear it. And that's exactly why it's formatted that way. It's exactly why it's in that order. It's exactly why we created it the way that we did. So I'm so glad it worked for you as well. Congratulations on your Network Plus cert. Best of luck with Security Plus, and maybe we'll see you next week for the Security Plus study group.
Definitely.
Thanks for calling. Best of luck.
Thank you so much.
That's always a good thing to hear, isn't it? That you know that just today got the certification. So I love hearing stories like that too, about what they did, how they did it, what the philosophy was, what they were working through, some of the things that they were challenged with. Always good to hear when you work through those. And some of the people in the chat room mentioned my videos, my course notes, everything I do follow the same order as the exam objectives. And that's why I mentioned to you, make sure you have the objectives. There was a mention on Reddit a couple of weeks ago where somebody thought the exam objectives were like 5 things, just a broad list of the 5 areas. They didn't understand that it actually told you everything you need to know to pass the exam. So make sure you get your hands on those objectives. I have a link on my site, professormesser.com/objectives. that will take you there. Let's go back to the phone calls down to South Florida. Hello, caller. Thank you for calling. Which name were you calling from?
My name is Kevin. I'm calling for Pembroke Pines.
Kevin, I used to live in Pembroke Pines. Married a girl from Hialeah myself, so I understand. Good to hear from you. What can we do for you today?
Yeah, I spoke to you last year where I was telling you about my new adventures into Apple.
Oh, yes.
And I spoke to you last year to that, and I mentioned about the thing about the age discrimination.
Right.
I don't know if you recall that.
Oh, yes. Many of us were talking about that for weeks afterwards. So we all do remember that. How have things been since then?
Yeah, right now I have moved over to Comcast now.
Nice.
And got to increase in my salary right now. And on today's my day off. They changed my day off to Wednesday and Saturday. So I get to see your videos now again. I haven't seen your videos in a long while.
Now, one of the challenges, and we brought this up before because this is kind of a significant thing in our industry is age discrimination. We always concerned about it when you're an old guy like me trying to get into the industry. Did you happen to see a difference? We make moves in IT all the time, but did you happen to see anything different along those lines when you moved from one organization to another?
No, with Comcast, I didn't see that. But when I signed an application for Apple last year, I just know it mentioned about a tax credit. It was something about a Florida tax credit. Right. Somebody, if you only eligible for it if you are within, I think 38 years old, 40 or within 40 years old. And I know from a capitalistic standpoint, you're gonna as an employer, you're gonna want tax credit. So I think it's like a bad incentive to give tax credit for people that are younger.
Yeah, I don't know that we ever figured out what that came from or what that was about, but it was definitely a weird one to run into. Well, I'm glad you made it over to Comcast. I'm a big Comcast customer. You're watching this live stream right now over the Comcast Business Network that is here at Messer Studios. So I'm glad there are technicians like you there making sure that entire network continues to run. It's an important part of what we do here.
Yeah. And thank you for your expertise. I mean, your notes, I remember when I took my exam last year, I passed it earlier in 2K18. Your notes were really beneficial for me. I mean, I bought a lot of material, and I graduated from Miami-Dade, but your notes alone was really what helped me out.
I'm glad to hear it. The reason I made those notes is that there wasn't really anything like that out there at the time, and I guess there really still isn't anything like that, which is it is the set of notes I always wanted when I was studying for my certifications, and I figure if it's something I could have used, that someone else would be able to use it as well. So I'm glad that it did.
Yeah, I mean, because I bought your notes, and I remember I bought that other guy with the hat. I think his name Mike Myers.
That's right. The guy with the hat.
Sort. Yeah, he was like a cowboy hat.
That's right.
Sometimes I bought his notes. I bought his book, and his book was very helpful, but it was a lot of erroneous stuff. And I remember that, and I was like, okay, when I read your notes, I was like, man, this contradicts a lot of stuff in his books. And I'm like, I read his long book, and it was like, okay, that some of this stuff is erroneous. And I know the CompTIA exams are very, they're big sticklers for accuracy. And it's like, okay, I need accuracy. I mean, if you're gonna write a book, you gotta make sure it's accurate. And that's the main thing I like about your notes is that your notes are accurate. I mean, I could write it. It's like a definitive source, whatever.
I will tell you, and this is sort of a common thing in the industry. It's very difficult to write a book, much less a technical book in our industry. And it's hard to do this because the books themselves, it's hard to write a technical book and not have some type of error inside of it. They're just so big and there's so much there. And for other people that are listening, you will find many of the books out there will have different things that are wrong with it, but almost always, and I know this is the case for Mike's books, and I know this is the case for other authors' books and other publishers' books, is you go to the publisher's website and they will often have what they call the errata. You can even search for the name of the book and the word errata, E-R-R-A-T-A, errata. And that is a list of all of the corrections that are associated with the book, because it's so hard to create a book like that and not have some type of problem in it. Now, I have the flexibility with my course notes that if I publish my course notes, and this has happened, and I found a misspelling or something in there isn't as clear as I would like it to be, I can change it and then republish the digital version, and people can just download the latest version. So I'm a little spoiled on mine because I can make errors just as well as anyone else. I just have the flexibility of republishing it, and people can get the latest version, not have to worry about going to the errata. Either way, though, I'm glad you got your hands on some content that made sense. Are you working towards a new certification, or is there a different set of things that Comcast wants you to do?
No, I'm totally content with all my certifications. I got an A+ and Network Plus.
Nice.
So I'm totally content. I'm just right now just like building up more experience and building my resume.
Nice.
I'm done with all the academia. I just want experience now. That's what I'm focused on right now.
Well, good for you. I lived in South Florida.
And me being a good seller, in Comcast, that you know, and selling the triple play and double play and explaining people and stuff like that, it's really, it really helped me out because I can explain to people about routers and modems, and they don't really understand nothing about that.
That's one of the things I always liked about South Florida too. I lived there about 10 years, and you're in a great location of the world to be able to do whatever you want to do next. So this is the perfect opportunity for you, is now you've got a place where you can apply some of the things you've already learned, and then later on, if you want to make a change, you want to make a move, there's plenty of opportunities in South Florida to do that. So congratulations to you.
Okay. So like I said, you're definitely a yeoman to the world of IT. And definitely keep up the good work.
I'm glad that worked out for you. I like to say that I did the easy part. I just put it on paper. You're the one that actually had to go through the process of learning everything. So congratulations to you as well. And best of luck in the future.
Okay. And thank you for your time.
Thanks for calling. That's always a good, glad we came back to got the final story on that one too. For those of you that were not listening to the earlier study group, we were trying to figure this out, is that he was applying to Apple for a position. I don't think I ever got a final understanding of, in the application, it was asking if you were eligible for a certain tax credit, but you had to be less than a certain age. And we were trying to figure out, are they trying to ask you what your age is in the application? Which obviously they can't ask you that. That would be a violation of federal law. You can't ask somebody their age on or anything else that is associated with those protected areas. So they can't ask that. But they could ask you if you were eligible for certain tax credit that would only be applicable to someone who is less than a certain age. Seems suspicious. I don't think it really was. I think somebody didn't know what they were doing when they put that on their application, or did they? That's really the question, isn't it? We still don't know the motivation behind that. We never did figure out what that was associated with. I'm not aware of a tax credit that's specific to Florida that is related to an age either. And I'm pretty deep into the tax junk because of what we do here at Master Studios. Not something I run into, although I'm well past 36 at this point. So that may be part of it. So I'm just not familiar with those. If anybody has any ideas what it could be, hit the contact us link on the website. I'd like to get feedback on that one. Maybe somebody can tell me what it happens to be, because that's something we never really did figure out. And I would like to know. From the chat room, this is one that comes up as the testing experience. So folks were talking in the chat room about you have to really watch the time. You could get a maximum of 90 questions on the exam. You're not going to get more than 90. You could get fewer than 90, but the exam objectives, they could give you 90 questions on the exam. They also tell you get 90 minutes. So if you do the math, that's a minute for every question. Hopefully you can pass through some of these questions faster, but a lot of these you have to read through. There's a lot of reading, especially with the performance-based questions. So if you're going through performance-based questions and having to deal with that, that's why I tell a lot of people, skip over those, get to the multiple choice, get through all of those, have enough time you can come back and work through the performance-based. It's really going to help you if you do that. There's a clock at the top. It's clicking away. Keep your eye on that. Make sure you watch those time frames. Everything needs to be answered on the exam. We know that you, from what we know about the grading on the exam, you don't get penalized for getting a question wrong. So they're not going to take points away from you if you get a question wrong. They just won't give you any points, which means you can take a guess and there's no penalty. So never leave a question blank on the exam. If you're getting there and there's a minute left and you still have 10 questions to go, mark all of them as A, I guess, or just choose the one you think is closest. Very quickly go through, but get all of them answered before your time runs out. Don't leave anything blank. And on the exam, they do give you, and I mentioned this in my 7-second subnetting video, is they give you a laminated sheet of paper and an erasable marker. And the thing I always find amusing is they give you an erasable marker that would probably be most appropriate if you were making banners or posters for a football game. They have a tip on them. It's like an inch long. Like, you can't use this to write anything that you want to keep on this piece of paper if you want to understand what it is. And I have taken my own fine-tipped erasable marker to my exam and asked them if I could use my marker. And of course, they look at it and go, well, yeah, it's just a marker. You can take that in. So that when they give me the piece of paper, I can write very detailed notes that I can read without having a mashed up bunch of big tipped marker on the, I don't know what good that is. What are they thinking? I don't know what they're thinking. That's not good to anybody. So sometimes you have to make it work for you. You have to work the system so that it works for you and what you're doing. So that's what you get. Everybody's going to get that laminated sheet and they'll get a marker. I only get one sheet. I've only ever gotten one sheet to write on. I think that's all they get these days. I'm also interested, we talked about this in the earlier call, that this transition is going on right now. If you have recently taken your exam, I would love to know if you can log into your Pearson Vue account and view that piece of paper that you would normally get printed out before you left. I'd like to know if you can view that online now. There was mention of this on Reddit. I never got a clarification, never got a verification of it. I would love to know if you can do that. I could not go back to my older ones and do that, but I haven't taken an exam in a while. So this is something relatively new. So if anybody's done that, I'd love to get your feedback and hear more about that too. It's one of those things I think would help as you're going through this list of what you need to know for the exam, what you need to know after you leave the exam. That's one of those things. I think it solves a big problem though, because every time I tell people, get your hands on that document, there's a lot of good information on it. Every time they finish their exam, the printer's been broken at the center that they're at. The printer's always broken. So I think that solves the printer's broken problem if it's something you're able to do. So I'd love to get feedback on that. The folks that were asking about the changes to the exam objectives, I did find my list of objectives that was the final version. I've got it up here just so we can see it. There it is. So those are the objectives for Network Plus that I mentioned. The green is things that are the same on the exam. Yellow is new. Purple was different enough that I needed to update and change a few things. But you can see they're all listed. Lots of yellow, though. Once you get the bag, there's plenty of yellow. A third of it, as we mentioned, 34% of it's yellow. So it seems like more of it when you look at it this way, isn't it? But those were the numbers I calculated. So we're going to go with those numbers. I guess some of these, like an entire section here, is all green. So it kind of throws off the stats a little bit. You can see it's not any one thing either. It's not like there's an entirely new section that's all yellow. It's that they changed some of the things and kind of peppered it in with the others. So there's a lot of green and there's a couple of yellows thrown in there. So that's kind of a similar scenario. So for those of you that asked about that, I'll work on that probably Sunday. I've got some things on Saturday already going on, but maybe Sunday I can sit down or before that. But check in with me next week and you should be able to see that. I will have it available at professormesser.com/objectives. I'll just put a Network Plus one there. I probably would not do the Security Plus objectives. For those of you familiar with Security Plus, when we went from the 400 series to the 500 series, it was a vast difference. It was a significant change. I don't even know if I still even have the change document for that one because it was so dramatically different. For those of you that have been following security, you know that was the case. Let's see if I have one for Security Plus, since we're talking about this, that shows changes. Do I have one? That's the 401. Let's go to the 501. And let's see if I have this. Does this show changes? I bet it does. I had to do it anyway. It doesn't show it very well. This is an older document. But here's the Security Plus, for example. Just huge swaths of yellow. Just entire sections of yellow. I think on this exam, do I even have stats on it? Bear with me. We're going to find out if I do have stats on the Security Plus, because it was just a massive change. For those of you that worked through this, I don't think I have. Oh, yeah, I did a 401 to 501 comparison. Of course I did. So on the 501 exam, the number of topics on the 501 exam, 758 of these individual exam objectives on the 501 exam, 466 of them were new. That meant 64% of the exam was brand new over the 501. So if you're somebody who's working on your Network Plus and you've had to, like the people in the chat room that were mentioning, I worked in the older version of the Network Plus. I'm trying to find the differences. The differences were minor when compared to the Security Plus. It's 30% versus 60-something%. So huge difference on the security. They almost rebuilt it. It's practically a new certification. They just restructured the entire thing and added different things, which I guess it needed, because I think Security Plus now is very good. I remember it taking forever to rebuild that course, because normally if you update a course, you have to update 30% of it. Imagine having to update more than half of it. It takes much longer. That's the hard part, the long, involved part of creating these, is making that happen. So folks that are looking here in the chat room, some folks that have taken their exam recently, there is an exam results tab or an exam history tab and view score reports option in Pearson Vue. And I thought I saw that as well, but is it showing you your score reports? I guess is the question. That's what I want to know. I saw that when I logged in, there was the option for that. So I want to know, are they really showing you the score reports? Or is that just something that's there for the time being and they haven't implemented it yet? That's what I was trying to figure out. So hopefully some of you have taken your exam recently or taken an exam recently. I'd love to know if you can log into your Pearson Vue in the exam history and view your score reports. I'd like to know if that's even an option. That'd be nice, wouldn't it? Can I even log into my Pearson Vue anymore? I'm going to try. We're going to see how this goes. See if I'm able to log in. I would like to, for test takers, that would be me. There's no login on their site. You have to kind of figure it out. I think I went down this road before. Like, there's no way to just log. I guess I have to find the right link to be able to get there. Why do we have to do that? Well, there we are. We'll have to figure that out once the study group is over, and I'll have to tweet out what we were able to find with those. It's always a challenge to find the right thing in the right place. So some folks that are in their account just pass. Your score report was a pass. Not exactly what we were hoping for, was it? I think they will be putting some more things in there. Viewing your score report seems to indicate that you would be able to view it, not just see pass or fail. We'll have to see if that ever comes to fruition. Be nice to have that there. Well, as I mentioned, we do one of these study groups every month we'd love for you to come back next month. We've got more study groups next week. So if you are studying for your Security Plus, come back next week. We'll do all Security Plus questions. So the first hour is all the Q&A where I ask you the question, and then the second half is the Q&A where you ask me the question. So we'll just do it all over again. We'd love to have you back here. Thanks for joining us this time, though. We will see you next time on the Network Plus Study Group.